This is State of Us Election 2020. We're still here. Ellen?
Against my will.
You can go. You're free to go. What are you doing here,
That's
Carl?
not what you say when the cameras aren't on. You
Go home.
have to say.
Go home, everyone. Let's go. Yeah, we're still going. We're still wondering who is going to lead us. We
Both,
also
I guess.
both.
Yeah.
People are leaving us all the time. In who's going to lead us into this brave new world? I suppose when we wound up yesterday, we were talking about it moving towards a Fianna Fáil Sinn Fein coalition. Alan, the seats have kind of, the way things are breaking, it's kind of shifting, a little bit away from that, is it?
Kind of, but like there's still, from what I can see with how the seats are now today, like Monday afternoon, evening, there's no combination of two that gets you anywhere near. So, I mean, Mary Lou will be like, if someone would answer the fucking phone when she rings, she's in contact with Labour, Soc Dems, Greens. But even if you got all of those, plus the independents, plus all the socialists, I'm still not sure that would be enough. So you're looking at a mishmash now where it'd have to be maybe like Fianna Fáil, Sinn Fein and the Greens.
But does that, given what we're experiencing, does that fulfill, like the idea that Micheál Martin would be Taoiseach at the end of this?
Yeah.
Does that fulfill the desire and the appetite for change that has been reflected in the vote? Or is it actually maybe the kind of compromise? Because, like Sinn Féin got the largest, first preference vote. They won't get the most number of seats because of the number of candidates they run. But at the same time, in a situation like this, they are one of many parties on about 22, 23, 24%.
I think Sinn Féin are probably in the strongest position, just given that they can probably feel the most optimistic about another election happening soon. It's them who probably will feel that if they're to run more candidates, they're going to end up with more seats than they have now. So you'd think that they hold the strongest hand at the minute. So that could be a major bargaining chip, just to continue the casino betting metaphor that I've started here. That could be a major thing. If they're in discussions with Fianna Fáil, maybe you're in a situation where, if they say, if you don't give us Taoiseach, Ministry for Housing, Minister for Finance, we're not going to go into government with you. We're going to pull the rug out from under it. We're all going to go to the polls again. And they could possibly be, if Eamon Ryan is a man who obviously wants a stable government, so if he's looking at this and he's thinking that, he can do the math as well as anyone else, that if there's another election, Sinn Féin are probably going to hit around 55, and he could be thinking that the Greens want to be on their side more than they want to be on Fianna Fáil's side. So he could refuse to go into government with Fianna Fáil on that basis as well. Kind of pegging what his goals to Sinn Féin's goals. So I think as far as things go now, Sinn Féin are sitting pretty. They're sitting pretty, and I don't think Micheál Martin has many bullets in the chamber as far as making himself Taoiseach.
But does that, I don't know what, that sort of presupposes that Sinn Féin want to go into power with Fianna Fáil, even if they get those ministries, is that the party they want to go into power with, having seen what happened to all, even though they're on similar size, just this idea that what happens when you go in with a traditionally bigger party.
Well, they've always maintained that they're ready to talk to anyone.
Yeah, but there is, but the people Mary Lou is talking to is whether it's lip service or not. Yeah. She is, very ostentatiously making contact with all the parties of the left.
The progressive ones first, yeah. Well, nobody gets... Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael voters have had the governments that they've wanted on and off since the foundation of the state. Now it's everybody's turn to be miserable and have a government that they don't want, including Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael voters. And I think Bertie Ahern was making the point that, it's only the day after, it's the first day after the count. And in other elections, when there was really weird results, the obvious result was not obvious for a long time. It will take a while during the week for things to a narrative to emerge. Like you could even see today in the RDS when Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael candidates were getting elected, even senior people like Richard Bruton, Pascal Donoghue, they weren't saying much because I don't think the parties themselves know what's going to happen. So it's basically all guesswork at the moment.
And where does it where does it leave Fianna Fáil? Because there's a number, as we're recording, Brendan Smith has said that he has emphatically, Jack Organ-Jones tweeted, he's emphatically rejected the idea of going into coalition with Sinn Fein, and said that there isn't, there's nothing that he said a suggestion that Micheál Martin has softened his approach to going in with Sinn Féin is news to me.
Well, Brendan should read a paper, listen to the comments. That was a spin from Fianna Fáil this morning as well, that was totally overblown. It obviously wasn't. Yeah. And you could hear people like Robert Troy saying it as well. Like Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are stunned by the Sinn Féin result, but they should also be paying attention to how poorly they've done in terms of transfers. Like I saw someone kind of making the point earlier on that the whole vote left, transfer left thing happened organically and basically brought back people like Joan Collins. Jean O'Kenny had conceded. Holly Cairns, who's now I think the only female TD in Cork, beat Tim Lombard from a long way off basically on transfers. So it's not just Sinn Féin voters who hate Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. It seems like the transfers were really, really weak from people who were voting for a lot of the other parties as well. You've basically had transfers from Sinn Féin helping Socialists, from Social Democrats helping Labour, helping Greens. So they need to realise that this is probably not a flash in the pan, and it's not going to fade away as soon as the shine goes off Sinn Féin. So if they want to be in government, they need to be talking to Sinn Féin now.
But do they? Because Fine Gael, I think we talked about this last night. I can't remember.
I blacked it out as well. Yeah.
Fine Gael, clearly are looking at it going, this is everyone else's mess now.
Yeah. I think someone was even making the point that Leo Varadkar looked relieved. He is a man unburdened, and he knows he's going to be at the other side of the chamber, just sending barbs at Taoiseach Micheál Martin and Taoiseach Mary Lou McDonald for the next few years.
But are Fianna Fáil not also now thinking that as well? Because we've seen Jim O'Callaghan today. Barry Cowan has said this, that I don't believe 22% of the vote is a vote of confidence in our ability to govern. And said that it is her and the left-leaning parties, talking about Mary Lou, should get together, form a government, find the 22 billion, and off they go. It's kind of you've made the promises, now go and do it. And
that's Jim O'Callaghan had a great quote this morning that said that he won't go into government with Sinn Féin. Fianna Fáil might go into government with Sinn Féin, and he won't leave Fianna Fáil. So that's some kind of weird. I don't know how he sees that working, but yeah, there's clearly resistance in Fianna Fáil's party base to going into government with Sinn Féin. So I think maybe they're relishing but they've been in opposition. I mean, they have considered themselves opposition while propping up the Fine Gael government. Yeah, so I don't really know if they'll feel so unburdened. They're already haven't been in government for 9 years.
But you see, everyone frames it in Fianna Fáil terms about, yesterday the conversation was, Micheál Martin doesn't want to be the only Fianna Fáil leader who's never been Taoiseach. Well, that's bad news for Micheál Martin, but for the rest of Fianna Fáil, it's not, it's not if you're a Fianna Fáil, if you're Jim O'Callaghan or somebody, especially, the rare Fianna Fáil TD in a Dublin constituency, or especially a South Dublin constituency where you may have been asked on the doorstep, do you promise you're not going to go into government with Sinn Féin? Because there was that 36% of people who didn't want Sinn Féin in government, and they were probably in places like that. The Dublin Rat Down, where were the 5 Sinn Féin candidates who didn't get elected? Dublin Rat Down, Dunleary, those places. So if you're a Fianna Fáil candidate, or who's answered that question on the doorstep, you don't care. You're thinking about your own seat and what those voters are going to say. That you don't care that Micheál Martin is never going to get to be Taoiseach. That's Micheál Martin's problem. It's nobody else's problem.
Yeah, I know that, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael voters are very afraid of Sinn Fein, but like Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael voters hate each other as well. And we had all this civil war shite around the time of Conference and Supply about how it was so inconceivable that the two parties could work together and they'd have to hand over the name of who assassinated Michael Collins and all this absolute shit. And Conference and Supply, which everyone said wouldn't work, wouldn't last a wet week, basically had a stable government for like 3.5 years throughout everything that happened with Brexit. So things change based on necessity. And yeah, it might not be this week. It might be in 70 days' time when we need a government formed quickly for the sake of like stability or getting a trade negotiation done for Brexit. But things will change. Like Sinn Féin will start to look more and more possible as time goes on.
Could there be a kind of minority left government, do you think?
No.
No.
That wouldn't work.
Why?
I mean, I just think at that point you're really scrambling to get the numbers together. It's very fractured. While the vote left, transfer left mechanism does seem to have produced a lot of successes, I think it's a big ask for that to transfer into actually like governing a country. I think that kind of system has been handy enough for rescuing people like Gino Kenny or Joan Collins, but I think it's a much bigger ask for them to actually meld together a programme from Sinn Féin's manifesto, from Soc Dem's manifesto, from PPP and from Greens, and to actually put that together with maybe the 81, 82 seats they'll have.
But what is the solution then? Like, what is if you are on the kind of vote left, transfer left side of the argument, what is the best case scenario?
The one that you've got now, where like Sinn Féin did really well and like the political conversation has changed. Like you want Fianna Fáil,
like, so you're saying that for that, even with that, you still want Fianna Fáil to come into that government and give it a bit of heft.
No, I just think, it's the best case scenario because at the end of the day, if you're a PBP voter, that there's no ending better than 6 TDs or 7 TDs. The same if you're Soc Dems, they're going to push 7 or 8. Labour are going to get even less. So you're talking about a best case scenario. Obviously, if you want to talk about a best case scenario, is that, Conor Reddy got in instead of Paul McAuliffe, etc., etc. But that's not happening. The Ruth Coppinger would have kept her seat. But they haven't managed to do that. So it's not about a best case scenario. Now, the best case scenario now, after all is said and done, and everything is not quite said and done yet, but with the current results we're seeing, the best case scenario is what they have now, and that is still probably not enough for them to have a left programme that governs the country.
Unless it's a left programme, unless it's a left programme that you actually you insist on on Fianna Fáil implementing.
Well, Fianna Fáil would claim that they're more centre-left than Fine Gael in a sense, but also like I don't even know if Sinn Féin would have the balls to do that, to derive from their result that all of the people, the 25% of the electorate who gave a first preference to Sinn Féin necessarily wanted them to go in with a load of left-wing parties. Like there's a big difference between giving your first preference to Mary Lou and giving your first preference to maybe like somebody like Eilish Ryan or any of the PVP Solidarity candidates who were in Dublin Central who didn't get in. I don't know if Sinn Féin would want to do that.
But also we're into this situation now where we're also trying to read the intentions of the electorate, and there was that extraordinary finding from the exit poll where more Sinn Féin voters and Fine Gael voters want tax cuts from their party and fewer Sinn Féin voters want money spent than any other party want money spent on public services. So it's like
this is what scares me.
The manifesto is there. Read there's a lot of money being spent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money being spent in that manifesto, and if you voted for it thinking you actually don't want money spent on public services, what else? Maybe it is. What else is it about Sinn Féin? Maybe it is the come out you black and tans. Maybe that's
no. Like the new division is there's stuff in the exit poll that shows the new division in Irish politics. People who vote Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are still voting based on the candidate, like the person that they know who's represented their constituency, blah blah blah. with Sinn Fein and the Greens, they're not voting on the candidate at all. They're voting on the party. And I don't think that's down to like the nitty gritty detail of manifestos. Like there was a taxi driver dropping me to the RDS on Sunday who said that his family were like genetically Fianna Fáil and he had voted Sinn Fein for the first time. And I asked him like which constituency, like who did you vote for? And he couldn't tell me the name of the Sinn Fein candidate that he'd given his first preference to.
But
So
we saw that and we thought, okay, that's they've grasped that means the Sinn Fein policies are what appeals to them.
No. He just said he wanted change.
Okay.
Like if I'd asked him, I doubt he would have been able to go through like all of the detail. Like I haven't heard any normal people, as in people who aren't political journalists and haven't been locked in the RDS for 48 hours, really talking in detail about things like the property tax. The only policy I've heard normal people bring up organically from Sinn Fein is the rent freeze.
Yeah. So you think that's it? You don't think there's anything underlying it? Like there's no reason why Sinn Fein have managed to harvest all these kind of left votes and the other parties are getting them by kind of default there.
I think so much of it was self-sabotage by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. You know, we've talked about it multiple times on this podcast, and I think it has to be accepted now that a lot of Sinn Fein were helped greatly by the idea, and you said this as early back as the first week, they're helped greatly by the persecution complex that they're disliked by the establishment. So everybody who wants to break free from the establishment knows exactly where to go to Sinn Fein. Whether or not they're, you know, sweeping in on leftist policies is a lot more up in the air, because at the end of the day Sinn Fein are not as far left as parties like PBP and Solidarity, and they're doing pretty much, you know, staying level at where they'd been before. So it's not a case of, like I said before, it's not a case of a far left surge. It's very specifically a Sinn Fein surge. So I think that has a lot more to do with the atmosphere that Sinn Fein have created. It has plenty to do with the rent freeze and probably a decent amount to do with the amount of houses that they're proposing to build, and also just sounding like they know what they're talking about on housing. But I think more than that, it is just to do with the fact that they are seen now as the opposite of what we've had.
Do you think there's also, when you talk about the difficulty of like a left coalition making the numbers, is there also that sense of the left, you know, you look at the fracture that there is on the left already, that the idea that you can get them all to agree on something, like you talked to Ruth Coppinger yesterday in an interview that we were just about to put out, and then she lost her seat.
Yeah, like she, you know,
so it never saw the light of day.
Like Ruth Coppinger, who obviously now has lost her seat, but she does still reflect the views of PBP, because we've heard the exact same thing from Paul Murphy and Richard Boyd Barrett, is that their main concern now has been to essentially put the pressure on Sinn Fein not to do a deal with Fianna Fáil. Ruth Coppinger was very clear. She called out Sinn Fein for supporting the bank bailout. She did all that kind of thing. So PBP have no great love for Sinn Fein. That's very clear.
But is that something that if you're Sinn Fein, you're anticipating now, if when you're, this is where, you know, whatever about Fine Gael and Leo Varadkar sniping at you, which you can probably handle, because you'll be able to blame him for things for a few years anyway. Like the threat to you know, if you hear Ruth Coppinger saying that, that's where you think the threat is going to come if you go into government with Fianna Fáil, that you're going to be criticised by the left or by the further left for not actually, you know, you're the part you support. You know, there's a starting point. You supported the bailout, and now look what you're doing. You're, whatever economic policies they're instigating or failing to instigate will be just more sort of grist to that mill.
Yeah.
You think? Yeah, okay.
I mean,
I
think that is, yeah. I mean, that's completely valid.
I've got better at just, you know, adding questions onto my statements, but that time I just made.
You don't even need us anymore.
You can go. But I want to ask you about the vote left, transfer left policy, because we talked about this again. I think we talked about it anyway. Certainly talked about it at some stage, either on air or off air, about this idea that we were in a kind of echo chamber when you saw these surge, you know, saw the surge, and even that could be explained away in the polls because young people responding to polls are more likely to be kind of progressive or of the left and various things like that. And then you see these things like vote left, transfer left, and they pick up on Twitter, which no normal people are actually on.
Yes.
You know, so you're wondering, is this actually then going to be reflected in the election? And it was. So how was that something that, how did that penetrate? How did that make the leap from like the Twitter bubble that we inhabit to the real world?
Influencers were radicalized. and it made it onto Instagram, which is where normal Huns live and normal people. Like, I saw it loads, and I saw a lot as well, like Fionnuala Jones talking a lot about voting for the least vulnerable person you know, which is basically like a left-wing agenda in disguise. Nobody's going to look at that and be like, okay, in you go, Fianna Fáil.
Like Fionnuala Jones, you're basically taking the Love Island demographic and being like radicalised.
I saw it a lot on Instagram, and I saw like a lot of people asking for the first time for advice on who they were going to vote for, and like that Instagram had that like vote sticker on it on election day, where you would put it on your story and then this vote thing would add it to its story. When I was clicking through first, it was all like vote left, transfer left, vote left, transfer left the whole way through. The occasional like selfie of Simon Harris making soup or like hugging a dog or whatever the fuck he does. And then vote left, transfer left, vote left, transfer left. Like it was everywhere. And it reached people who probably weren't engaging with like normal mainstream political media at all.
I think that vote tag probably did some serious influencing, because it was up from, I think, maybe midday the day before.
Yeah.
You know, so I think Instagram probably have a lot to answer for as far as the results of the election go.
Nobody tell Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I dread to think how they would approach Instagram.
Oh, no, let's
we've
not.
seen Fine Gael's attempt at social,
like
viral videos.
Yeah. They got a lot of credit from people claiming they were making boomer memes, as in like deliberately making them bad, but they were just like that was their radical.
You can only
even that idea makes me sorry. It makes me
you have to have some evidence that they're not just bad at things before you can claim that they're doing it deliberately.
I suspect, just going by his own personal Twitter feed, I suspect that Noel Rock had a lot to do with that. And now Noel Rock has lost his seat. Maybe they'll get better at memes now that Noel Rock is gone. Maybe there's a meme lord in waiting in Fine Gael somewhere. You know, maybe Charlie Flanagan has a knack for it.
That's what they go away, get out of power for a while, and just improve. Get it better.
Have a normal job making
become
memes.
more empathetic and get better at
spend some
memes.
time on Ireland Simpsons fans, and then you know.
So before we go, you were saying this is going to take. You think this is going to take weeks and weeks of.
You said
I don't
70
know.
days there at one point.
Like
oh God.
Like last time. I think that's what it took last time. I can't remember. I don't know. I can't remember if things I read yesterday were about this election or the last one, or how long today has been, or when I first came into the studio, what day was it? It could take, it's going to take the week for even the first narrative to emerge before you even get into red lines. I'm pretty convinced there's the one solid thing that's going to come out of this is a rent freeze.
But is there a chance? There is talk within Fianna Fáil. There is kind of talk about Micheál Martin. He hasn't done it. He hasn't. The things we've talked about that they didn't really stand for anything. Leo Varadkar's leadership is being questioned too. Are they the things that are going to happen before?
No, they couldn't. It would just be too. There's enough chaos for 1 February,
right?
So they won't throw that into it as well. But I mean, there's no kind of. I don't know if the heaves will be that quick or ruthless either. They're all a bit shook from what's happened. So maybe throwing a leadership contest into it is too much for some of them. You'll have to see, it depends on who ends up in the back benches, who hasn't lost their seats and what kind of axes they have to grind. If I was in Fianna Fáil, I'd say a lot, because the strategy was not good.
What was the strategy?
Fuck knows, based on how people were doing. There was a lot of crazy decisions made. And I think that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are lucky that Sinn Fein did so well, because it hasn't been the main thing that political journalists are interested in. But in the coming days, I say, there's a lot of angry people in both those parties.
But do you think the Sinn Fein campaign was good of itself, or was it something that just managed to be by default better than Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael? No.
Sinn Fein didn't do anything radically different to what they've been doing in opposition since 2016.
I feel like the turning point was really when that first poll came out. Nobody was really talking about what we've ended up with. Nobody was forecasting this. And I know there's people out there who complain when we say nobody saw it coming. But the fact is that nobody did predict 37 seats for Sinn Féin. Nobody did. No political pundits and nobody on the doors thought that this was going to happen. Even the early polls where Sinn Féin were performing really well didn't reflect that. So this was a surprise. And it was a surprise precisely because, as Ellen says, Sinn Féin weren't doing anything particularly different. It was very, very clear from the number of candidates they chose that they didn't see it coming. They ran 50 last time, 42 this time. The didn't expect to be where they are now. So certainly not. They didn't have a particularly revolutionary or special campaign.
Okay, guys, you are free to go.
For now.
For now, but you can go. We will be back some stage soon, but not immediately. So Ellen and Carl can leave the building. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe on all the usual channels. And if you like the show, please leave a review. See you soon.